everyone, I'm Gemma Beall, and welcome to Attaining the Second Cognition. In the Transitions and Observations video, I discuss many things, one of them being how we are conditioned to conflict, whether with each other or within our own minds. For this presentation, I'm going to focus on how we've been conditioned to conflict with each other. I shared with everyone, also in the Transitions and Observations video, that moving forward we would be taking our listeners into the mind to show how the indoctrination of the external world has turned us into our own jailers in our own minds by the mental processes and behaviors left behind by the Hepime virus. I know this information is not fun and exciting, and there really isn't a way to make it fun and exciting. This internal work in actuality is the most important work one can do for themselves, but is the most difficult work for one to do because we have to be brutally honest with ourselves and acknowledge that we all do this. There are many that may have already done the internal work and have begun to remove these behaviors and mental processes from their operating function, but there are more subtle ways that most do not see because they are so goddamn subtle. With this presentation, I'm going to be sharing more of my observations of my own journey and observations of others in dealing with commenters on this channel. What I'm going to share, as usual, is not to call anyone out specifically, even though I will be using direct examples. It is so others can observe and recognize something within themselves. If you take offense to anything here, please set it aside and observe. And remember, I personally will not benefit by you observing and considering this. Only you will. For a moment, though, I want to digress. Most of you that are familiar with our work, both past and present, know that Endel and I created the word Hepime to replace the usage of the word ego because the word ego has been so bastardized to the public perception because of the pop psychology of the theosophist. I've had many conversations with others in dealing with the public, and it cracks me up how many people believe they understand this internal monster based off of a 5-minute video or reading one theosophical opinion or taking Psychology 101 10 years ago. I've had people argue with me about this, and when I asked them where they studied the field, without fail, every single one of them stated that they've never studied the field in depth, only taken one psychology class, maybe. Most people regard the field of psychology as all about the ego, and in a sense that is absolutely correct, but the ego, or what the field believes it to be, is so intricate one can study it for a lifetime and never have a complete understanding of it. I was studying my own human behavior long before I studied it academically, and I still study my own mind and observations daily so I can help others understand more about why we are the way that we are and why we do the things that we do. Here is an analogy. One simply thinking the ego is fill in the blank with whichever description you like, is like looking at a stagnant pond. They skim the surface to clean off the muck and thinking, wow, we now have a clean pond. They never look below the surface to see how mucky the water underneath is. What we're trying to get people to understand is that what is below the water, what's in the mind, that needs to be addressed and cleaned up if everyone wants to depart a reality that feeds the pond scum for a reality with clean and clear water, on top and underneath. I can't tell you exactly when this began occurring in my life, but I was in my early adulthood that I began to realize something about myself. I'm a blunt person, a very blunt person, but I come by it honestly. I was raised by a brutally blunt person and was always taught to speak the truth, don't mince your words, and if you don't know what the hell you're talking about, keep your mouth shut until you do. It is because of my blunt nature that I used to always encounter others getting pissed off by what I was saying or getting their feelings hurt. In analyzing myself initially, I realized that about 90% of the issues I was experiencing was more because of me, not because of the other person. Because of this realization, I created a habit of putting myself in other people's shoes before I spoke to see how I would feel if those same words were spoken to me in the manner in which I was saying them. This realization was while I was still operating an ego and was extremely sensitive to words. This also created my habit of analyzing words and how I react to them to see where my ego was controlling me through my mentalities. You've heard us say many times that any word, concept, or idea that invokes a negative emotion within you does so because it's an ego belief reacting to its turf being pissed on. This wasn't just one of my observations before I began studying the field. It is one that the field has studied heavily, and it holds the truth if one looks within honestly when they experience this. You will notice in the newer videos I keep mentioning, as does Endel, about mentality. I think now is a good time to share the definition of the word. Mentality is defined as the characteristic attitude of mind or way of thinking of a person or a group. To me, I think the better definition of the word would be a mindset. A mindset is defined as the established set of attitudes held by someone. The key word in this definition is established. In the intimidation video, I talked about the inversion mentality. This is the mindset that inverts the perception of a situation. I used several examples in that video. In this video, I'm going to give a greater example by some comments that took place on a recent video. Sadly, the comments have since been removed by the original poster, so I'll be speaking in generalities and will only be able to use examples from what I can remember. The commenter number 1 posted a comment that basically shared a similar point of view from the content in my video. This point of view was shared in a very blunt, but not a mean manner. Another viewer felt as though commenter 1 was telling others what to think with their response. In my perspective, the comment didn't come across this way, so I asked commenter number 2 some questions, one being if they felt I was trying to tell others what to think in my presentations. The answer was no. The reason for this perception was because commenter number 1 addressed a perspective that I did not raise in my video, and it was a perspective that commenter number 2 disagreed with. In the meantime, commenter number 3 offered up a comment that was in no way inflammatory, nor did it have anything to do with the rest of the comments. There was some back and forth between commenter number 1 and number 2, with me raising some questions and points of consideration for both in order to draw us all to a common ground away from the conflict. Commenter number 2 then commented to commenter number 3 in a manner that was taken the wrong way, and then commenter number 3 came back with a comment that said, quote unquote, "Some people like the sound of their own voice." In my perspective, this comment was an assumption and an opinion that would probably be viewed as inflammatory by commenter number 1 and number 2, since there was energetically already conflict in the air. Yes, I made an assumption here in order to try to diffuse more conflict on the comments thread. When I asked commenter number 3 about how the comment would be beneficial to the discussion, commenter number 3 explained that some of the comments were too wordy and that more could be conveyed with less words. This is something that could be true. However, in my perspective, from witnessing this and asking the questions that I asked, if more words had been used initially, this conflict could have been avoided altogether. This type of mental behavior has been something we've experienced the last year and a half of doing these videos, and this type of mental behavior is stuff we've been talking about in our videos during that time. This same type of mental behavior is the reasons we turned off the comments in the first place on the older videos. We want to have interactions with you. We want you all to have interactions with each other on our videos. Discussions and questions can be so incredibly beneficial to everyone if everyone will recognize their own mental behaviors and work to correct them, so we can all communicate in a manner that is conducive to advancement and growth, not conflict. Commenter number 1 is blunt. You know what? So am I. But if I've learned anything in doing these videos, you don't have to sugarcoat anything to get a message across, but coating it with tax isn't going to work either. This is a lesson I've learned the hard way on the older videos, which is why I'm now being softer in my approach, because I want to help others, not piss them the fuck off. Commenter number 2 obviously has issues that they need to work on, and from their additional comments, they are trying to do so. None of us cleaned out our mental shit overnight, nor do we expect anyone else to do so. If someone is having an issue, realize the fact that they are here and trying to communicate is them trying to get a handle on it. Give them a hand, don't slap them in the face. If you can't do that, or you try and it doesn't work, walk away, plain and simple. I energetically read every comment on these videos because everyone transmits their personal energies, especially emotional energies, when they comment. I'm not saying I nail it every single time, but I'm pretty damn good at it because I've been focused on doing it for over a decade now. If you see me verbally bitch slap someone, it's because they are an internet troll and they will swiftly get banned. I don't care what your words look like. I care about the energy you convey through your words on these threads. If you can't read energy, don't automatically assume what's going on in someone else's mind. Only they know what's going on in their mind when they comment, which is why you see me asking them questions or making observations so they can look in their own minds to see if the observation has merit. Even if they don't see it, that's their issue and nobody else's. I work around a lot of people and have for a really long time with human behavior as my focus of study. I intimately understand every mentality I've shared with you in our work, not because I've studied it academically, but because I've studied it in my own mind, and I see the correlations with the academic and I feel the correlations in reading energies. I used to have others make fun of me because they think I'm too wordy. I am too wordy. You know why? It's not because I like the sound of my own voice, it's so others understand exactly what the fuck I have going on in my mind. I work with the king of fucking vague. I know how much confusion and conflict ensues when people don't fully convey what goes on in their mind and what they want others to know or do. This is one of the reasons in the questions I ask you to consider, I always include why. Most people have their thoughts and opinions and shit, but don't know why they have those thoughts and opinions. They hold beliefs and they don't know why they hold those beliefs. But they are only going to find out if they ask themselves why. It really doesn't matter if you agree with others or if they agree with you. Commenter number 1 is free to have their perspective and share. So is commenter number 2 and commenter number 3. Any perspective that one holds is irrelevant to the other commenters. Whether any single commenter agrees with the other's perspective or not is irrelevant to both the commenter that holds the perspective and the commenter that disagrees with the perspective, unless that commenter wants to analyze why they disagree with it. Even then, what good does it do to enhance a discussion if the commenter that disagrees doesn't explain why they disagree with it? If it's obvious that a commenter isn't willing to consider, is it conducive to any part of the discussion to start a pissing match of opinions or perspectives? Your path is yours, and you choose what you learn and what you know and what you're willing to accept and how much you are willing to expand yourself. If someone else shows they are rooted in a perspective, then let them root there. They will unroot in their own time if they choose to or not. It has nothing to do with you. This is not what I used to do, but now it's something that I've learned over our hiatus that I feel is more conducive to a healthy discussion on expanding a topic rather than swirling down the conflict shit drain. If I see someone that has a perspective that I've never experienced, I observe, and then contemplate the perspective in my own time. If I see someone share a perspective that I've held and moved beyond as I've expanded my awareness to see the larger picture, I keep my perspective to myself because if they are continuing to contemplate their own experiences, their perspective will alter as they expand. If they don't, that's not my problem, nor am I going to make it my problem. If I feel a soika push to share my perspective, I will not start out with "I disagree," because that is a statement that shows a locked mindset. I will respond by offering them a different perspective for them to consider if they choose to consider it, and I will explain why I have the different perspective. I've been exposed to very few perspectives that I've not already held and moved on as I've expanded my awareness. I'm not saying this as a point of bragging, I'm saying this because it's a truth, and I've dedicated that much time and that much of my energy on my path to expanding my awareness and my soika. I've gone through most of the belief systems and embraced a majority of them and outgrew them as I expanded. I've embraced most of the New Age modalities and outgrew them as I expanded. I'm no longer interested in most earth-based human stuff because I see, feel, and know the larger picture of the universe and my place in it, and is far more interesting than this first cog bullshit. First cog is about conflict and control. Second cog is about peace and freedom. They push conflict on us so subtly that we don't notice it, and conflict does not create. You can't create something new and better if you're perpetually trying to start or participate in conflict over perspectives. Detachment removes you from the need to conflict. If you still feel the need to defend a perspective or to participate in a conflict, then you haven't achieved it. This was the exact mentality and ego behavior that we meant in our Take It or Leave It video. If you are engaging through the comments section, here is something that you can try instead of starting or participating in conflict. If a commenter says something that you don't understand, don't assume what they mean. Ask them to explain in more detail. If you see a comment that creates an emotional reaction in you, before you react and respond, analyze the emotional reaction for the basis. This will be far more conducive to learning and expanding for everyone. I know some of you will perceive that I'm trying to tell you what to do, and in a sense, I am on my channel. What you do on your own time and on other places, I don't care. But on my channel, I've created an environment for learning and sharing, and my creation is one of peace and freedom. Endel supports this, and he is fully in co-creation with me on this. But your freedom does not include starting or perpetuating conflict here on what we've created. I'm showing you a better way to communicate for you to learn and for others to learn in a peaceful and creative environment. I want to thank everyone for listening and considering this information. I'm Gemma Beall. Stay the course and don't give up on yourself or each other.